July 12th, 2025. Well, I want to get into a couple of things here, as you say from the title. Trump, Putin, and Epstein. Because these are kind of the hot topics there, which basically settles into two basic issues, which I'll definitely get into the Epstein issue a little bit later in the video. But let's start off with the situation between Trump and Putin. As we well, and this also relates to some other issues that have been in the news. We've had, of course, first of all, the Pentagon cut off supply of military aid to Ukraine. There was a shipment that was all in Poland, ready to go, and it was cut off. And then after that, Trump had his call with Putin, and apparently the call, at least from Trump's point of view, didn't go as good as he'd hoped. And then after that was over, about a day or so later, Trump then basically, says now we're going to continue to send weapons to Ukraine and orders them the shipments to continue. So what's going on with this? Well, the press has different ways of playing around with it. One way they're trying to suggest either Pete Hegseth or some other guy who's a policy guy, his name I don't recall, a sub-cabinet level person in the Pentagon, on their own just decided to do this without consulting anybody in the White House. Yeah, I really believe that. No, I think this is part of the gambit. I think what Trump was doing was he was saying, okay, I'll cut off aid to Ukraine. Now I'll call Putin and see if that will be enough of a sweetener to get him to accept the position I've been putting out on this ceasefire we've been asking. Because remember, Putin's big pushback has been essentially along that, okay, we agreed to a ceasefire, and all you do is send a lot of weapons to Ukraine, they recruit a bunch of troops, they train, and now they're going to be in a better position to fight than they were before the ceasefire. And when it breaks down, which it probably will, since it's just a ceasefire, we'll be in a worse position because we haven't achieved our objective yet, and they are not willing to negotiate on any of the principles that we've been laying out, right? So that's Putin's point of view. And apparently Trump was upset that he didn't make progress on this, and so then he naturally orders the shipments to continue. See, this is what I think was going on. It wasn't a question of Hegseth trying to upstage Putin, upstage Trump, or play in the. It wasn't anything of the sort. It was a gambit, and it didn't work, and so now we're going to go on to the next phase, which apparently is this announcement that he's going to have, I think, on Monday, which will be the 14th, so about Russia, and I presume this is when they're going to go with the bigger sanctions, I guess, which I presume at this point is the is the Senate bill that's that's been worked on here, and so we'll see how that all plays out. But essentially, I think I guess that's what he's talking about. On the other hand, I would argue that to some degree, really, if you look at Ukraine is the one that's pretty much rejected his position just as much when you come down to it. So I don't know. We'll figure out what's going on with that. But I think that explains the whole brouhaha about that, and I think that there isn't really the kind of conflict in administration on that one, at least, that the press would like to have. Anybody thought of, and that I don't think this means that Hegseth's in any trouble or anything else about that. So anyway, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and you can also follow me on Rumble if you're on that, prefer that source. Yeah, so that's kind of my view on that one. Now, of course, the real issue on that, when we get into it, is, will these sanctions work? I mean, if in fact we put on these massive, I guess, 500% tariff on anybody that buys any oil from Russia or something, sanctions, if this really happens, I don't know what actually occurs. That seems to me to fly in the face of the deals we've been negotiating with China and India. It presumably, if it's successful, would take Russian oil off the market and begin to skyrocket energy prices to some degree. I don't know. To some degree, it looks like the Persian Gulf states are trying to increase their production to compensate. So it looks like that maybe why there's been a temporary dip in prices. Just recently, I've seen them spike back up again, at least locally where I was. So I was traveling at the time, so I don't know, what that says overall. At any rate, so that's kind of the way I see that one, and we'll see how that plays out. Now, on the other hand, let's get on to the Epstein part of this. Apparently, the Justice Department, I presume from the Attorney General, issued a statement which is interesting, that basically said that that there was no client list, and that basically there's no evidence that he was using was blackmailing people, and so they're basically just dropping the whole thing. Now, and which allegedly has then resulted after that with a kind of a backlash in the hardcore MAGA people who are looking for a lot of big name evil Democrats to go to jail for pedophilia, and and so which has been a theme ever since Pizzagate, right? And it may be real, don't think. But at any rate, it appears that that's not really what they were going to do there, and. Now, the latest thing, as of this recording, and I don't know what's going to happen next, is that Dan Bongino, the recently appointed and confirmed deputy director of FBI, has had a really nasty argument with Pam Bondi, and then didn't show up for work on Friday, and maybe threatening to resign or something over this. So, I don't know. We'll see. I hope that doesn't happen, because I think it'd be good to have him on the job. I mean, everything in the world is not the Epstein case. Remember, there's still the case of the bombing attempts on the DNC and RNC on January the 6th, and so that still could be a live issue for him to work on. But my view on this is this is not Pam Bondi, okay? I think it's Trump. I think what she's doing is what Trump ordered. Look at the meeting that they had. Trump was the one saying, why mess around with this? He also had there was an interview he had with at some point with Bill O'Reilly, and he was saying there basically that the problem with this is that everybody that had any association with Epstein wasn't necessarily involved in anything involving underage girls or whatever. That everybody wasn't involved in that. That maybe they just had a meeting with him over something or other. Apparently he was some kind of a person that people met with for whatever reason. Maybe he had information on people, maybe obtained through blackmail. I don't know. At any rate, he felt he didn't want to just dump a list of everybody he'd associated with and it would be taken out of context for the media and create all kind of stuff. That was apparently what he told Bill O'Reilly. So don't jump on Bondi over this. She's just taking orders from her boss, okay? And at least that's the way that's the way I see it. So whether you like Trump's decision or not on this, at the moment that seems to be it. Now it looks to me like, while there may or may not be specifically a list, actually. There is a list that's out there on a website called Sonar 21, which lists an interesting group of names on it. Whether those are the right names or not, but supposedly those were retrieved by just people doing investigation and paying attention to all the court documents and statements everybody's made. There's only one case I can recall, and if there's more, let me know, but it's the one with Prince Andrew and the lady who sued him, right? That one's gone public, and that one of the names on the list I saw. And apparently in that case there was the malfeasance in question. And probably many others as well. I don't know. It would seem to me you don't need a list as such. If we have all these videos, I mean, are all the videos of Epstein having sex with underage girls? I mean, so what I'm thinking is, presumably there's other men involved in these videos, so you don't have to release the videos, for goodness sakes. That would be child pornography, right? If you release that. But the point, what you could do is you could go through the videos and identify the men involved in these things, and identify what crimes they're committing, and then you could just
pick an appropriate still from it, block out the identity of the girl involved, and then identify that. From that, you could create your own list, you would think. So in that case, you wouldn't be just dealing with somebody that had met him for lunch or something, or something basically innocent, So at any rate, I don't know what's going to happen next on this. I kind of hope that whatever happens, that Dan does not resign, because overall it's good to have somebody of his intentions in there. And remember, I'm pretty dang sure that it isn't Bondi operating on her own. I don't think that's the case. Just like I don't think it was Hegseth deciding on his own to cut off aid or something, or some subordinate of his, without telling anybody. So at any rate, whatever is afoot here, I had another darker thought. Maybe Trump really wants the information to blackmail these people himself. I don't know. I don't think that's true, but you never know. I mean, hey, it's hardball politics. And remember, any of you Democrats out there that think he's trying to protect himself, remember one thing. If the Democrats had a hold of this stuff, and anything like that was true about Trump, they would have used it, and he would have been destroyed and never got elected in the second term here. So that is not what it is. So anyway, that's kind of what I think about those two issues, and we'll have to see what happens Monday on the Russia front. But and my own opinion on that is, again, I don't know why we're continuing to back these Ukrainians like we are. If Ukraine would actually agree to negotiate based on the terms of the Russian position, I think we could back Russia off of some of their more extreme claims and get down to something, where, like, for instance, like I said before, no land on the west side of the Dnieper River would go to Russia, and certain lines would have to be developed. They would presumably get some of the key territories, but maybe not all of them, and we could settle on this thing. And maybe we could settle it, I would think, potentially by having a internationally supervised vote in these regions that Russia's claiming, to see whether people really want to be part of Russia or they want to be part of the Ukraine. I mean, I think they already had one in Luhansk and Donetsk, and they voted to be with Russia. Now, I don't think that was necessarily rigged, but it's not internationally supervised, and therefore it's questionable. So it'd be interesting if you could have kind of a neutral situation on that, maybe, or something of that sort. Because obviously there's a lot of people in the legal, internationally recognized territory of Ukraine that don't want anything to do with the Kyiv government, and there's a lot of people there that don't want anything to do with Russia. So, I mean, and the question is how you separate those variables and get to a peace deal is what I think. But anyway, I'll be wrapping this up for now, and I'll be, putting this as always on YouTube and Rumble, and address my social media accounts are in the description below. You can look for me to be posting most frequently on X day to day. All for now.